Akishina left his home and began living at the Sunaharasu boarding house with a firm determination to prove that he could live independently and be seen as more mature. However, once he arrived, his naturally cute appearance led Ayaka Sunahara and the other female residents to surround him with constant attention, treating him like a child rather than an adult. Their caring yet playful behavior often left Aki feeling awkward, as his desire to appear grown-up clashed with the warm but teasing atmosphere that followed him every day. Aki was a middle school student who was standing in Tokyo while looking at a city map. He quietly observed several girls passing by and thought about how many different kinds of people lived in Tokyo. The girls noticed Aki as well and wondered among themselves whether he was a boy or a girl. Aki then asked a woman for directions to Sunaharasu. After showing him the route, the woman assumed that Aki had just moved to the area. Aki introduced himself politely, and the woman believed that Ayaka would be happy to welcome such an adorable new resident. Aki had moved into the dormitory in the spring because he was about to start middle school. He deliberately chose Tokyo because, in his previous hometown, he was often mistaken for a girl due to his cute appearance. Aki felt motivated to begin a new chapter of his life and hoped to become more confident and mature. Suddenly, heavy rain began to fall, leaving Aki completely soaked. Not long after, he arrived at Sunaharasu. When he stepped inside, the dormitory felt unusually quiet, and Aki assumed no one was around. Unexpectedly, a young woman approached him from behind and playfully surprised him, which caused Aki to turn around in confusion. The woman introduced herself as Ayaka, the caretaker of Sunaharasu, and greeted Aki warmly. Aki was genuinely surprised to learn that she was the dormitory caretaker, as he had not expected someone so young to hold that role. Ayaka noticed that Aki was drenched from the rain, and out of concern for his health, guided him inside so he could warm up and rest. Afterward, Aki soaked in a warm bath. He found himself wondering why no one had mentioned that the dormitory caretaker was so young. Since the caretaker also lived in the dormitory, Aki realized that he would be sharing the same roof with Ayaka, who left a strong impression on him with her kindness and calm demeanor. Ayaka checked on Aki to make sure he was comfortable and explained that helping new residents adjust had always been part of her family's responsibility. In the past, her grandmother usually handled these duties, but since she was currently receiving medical care, Ayaka had taken over. Aki felt deeply relieved and thought about how much he wanted to reassure his father in Shizuoka that he was doing well and that Tokyo truly felt like an amazing place. At that moment, Ayaka assumed that Aki was a girl, which caused some internal conflict for him. Aki struggled between staying silent to avoid embarrassment and being honest in order to grow into a more confident young man. After gathering his courage, Aki clearly explained that he was actually a boy. Ayaka quickly understood and acknowledged her misunderstanding, since most residents at Sunaharasu were usually male. Even after realizing the truth, Ayaka remained calm and supportive. To her, Aki was still a child who needed proper care and guidance. She reassured him that her role as caretaker was to look after all residents equally, regardless of gender, and to make sure they felt safe and comfortable in their new environment. When Aki later opened his eyes, he found himself resting in a room. He wondered why he had lost consciousness earlier and realized it was due to exhaustion from the long day and the cold rain. He felt warm and secure, knowing Ayaka had made sure he was properly taken care of. Aki apologized for causing trouble, but Ayaka explained that she could not leave him in such a weakened condition and had helped him change into dry clothes so he could rest. Aki felt embarrassed at the thought of causing concern, while Ayaka admitted she had initially mistaken him for a girl because of his name and gentle appearance. She promised to continue taking good care of him as the caretaker of Sunaharasu. Aki thanked her sincerely but also expressed that he hoped she would not overexert herself for his sake. Ayaka responded with reassurance, explaining that everything she did was simply part of her responsibility. She then mentioned that she would prepare dinner and would let Aki know once it was ready. Before leaving, she gave him a comforting gesture to encourage him to relax and regain his energy, explaining that she simply wanted him to feel welcome and at home. Aki watched Ayaka while she was cooking, feeling genuinely impressed by how capable she was. She seemed able to do everything on her own while managing the dormitory by herself. Ayaka was not only kind and attractive, but she also never really saw Aki as a boy. She often treated him in a very affectionate and protective way. Aki had already asked her not to call him Aki-chan, yet Ayaka thought the nickname sounded cute. Back then, Aki's friends used to call him the same way because they often mistook him for a girl, and they even enjoyed dressing him up. Aki had hoped that moving to Tokyo would give him a completely different daily life and help him become more confident and masculine, but it seemed that his situation had not changed much. Even so, Aki encouraged himself not to give up so quickly on his very first day. When Ayaka was hanging laundry outside, Aki approached her, wanting to prove that he could be reliable. He rushed over and offered to help, but due to his clumsiness, he accidentally picked up one of Ayaka's personal clothing items, which immediately made him flustered and embarrassed. Ayaka simply smiled and said she appreciated his help, while also reminding him that she could handle the laundry herself. Feeling awkward, Aki quickly tried to refocus. Ayaka then asked him to help with the bed sheets, followed by taking care of the plants, but Aki ended up stumbling while carrying water. When they moved on to mopping the floor, Aki became overly enthusiastic and slipped again. Ayaka hurried over to make sure he was not hurt. At that moment, Aki explained that he had decided to act more confident and mature because ever since he was young, people had treated him like a girl. That was the main reason he chose to move to Tokyo, hoping to change how others saw him. Ayaka gently embraced him and suggested that he did not need to force himself to change. She apologized for not realizing how he felt earlier and promised to start calling him Aki-kun instead. However, the way she said his name still sounded just as cute as before. Aki asked her not to treat him like a child, but Ayaka disagreed, saying that to her, he was still young. She teasingly added that she might treat him more like an adult someday, though it was clearly said in a lighthearted and playful way. That same day, 3 girls living at Sunaharasu were expecting the arrival of a boy at the dormitory. They planned to act strict as his seniors. Just as Aki and Ayaka were standing close, the 3 girls suddenly appeared. They were Yuri, Yuzu, and Sumire, and all of them were surprised by what they saw. Yuzu quickly asked them to stop, lightly scolding Ayaka for teasing Aki too much. Sumire jokingly told Aki that the 3 of them had also experienced Ayaka's playful behavior before. Aki was amazed by how tall Yuri and Sumire were. Yuri assumed that Ayaka often put people in awkward situations and believed that most boys would easily be overwhelmed by her personality. Hearing this made Ayaka feel slightly uneasy as memories of past misunderstandings crossed her mind. Yuzu then encouraged Aki not to look so down and introduced herself as the student council president of Tanamachi. Suddenly, Sumire lifted Yuzu up with ease and introduced herself as the vice president. She became overly excited and lost her balance, collapsing shortly after. Yuri then introduced herself as the student council secretary. At first, Aki felt relieved because Yuri seemed calm, though she quietly drifted off into her own imagination. Aki introduced himself to everyone, and Yuzu said that she and her friends, as his seniors, would look out for him. Ayaka quickly objected, saying that taking care of Aki was her responsibility as the dorm manager. Aki then noticed something unusual on top of Yuzu's head and curiously wondered about it. Yuzu became shy and asked him not to ask about something so embarrassing. She laughed and spun around playfully. Sumire explained that Yuzu was a sweet person, and the accessory on her head symbolized her growth and confidence. She also mentioned that Yuzu often felt insecure about herself, which was why Sumire tried to support her as much as possible. Aki wondered how Sumire knew so much, but Sumire simply told him not to ask too many questions. She then guided Yuzu to head back inside. From Aki's perspective, their height difference made them look almost like a parent and child. Yuri commented that Sumire and Yuzu looked good together and explained that the 3 of them had always been close since childhood. She added that Sumire could be a bit hopeless at times, which was why their relationship never seemed to move forward. Yuri believed that things would change that year and asked Aki to help in any way he could. Ayaka then told the 3 girls to go take a bath while she prepared their favorite meal. Yuzu happily invited Yuri and Sumire to go with her, which immediately overwhelmed Sumire once again. After the 3 of them left, Ayaka jokingly suggested continuing what they had been talking about earlier, which startled Aki. It turned out she was only teasing him, and she quickly headed to the kitchen to cook. Later, Aki went to his room and lay down on his bed, still unable to fully process everything that had happened that day. One morning, Ayaka woke Aki up while he was still sleeping deeply. She reminded him that it was the day of the new student entrance ceremony. Because Aki did not wake up right away, Ayaka tried harder to get his attention, which startled him and made him open his eyes immediately. Not long after that, Yuzu came into Aki's room after hearing the noise coming from inside. She scolded both of them for causing such a commotion early in the morning. Ever since Aki moved into Sunaharasu, similar noisy mornings had become a regular occurrence. They quickly got ready because it was an important day. Yuri, Yuzu, and Sumire left earlier since they were members of the student council and had responsibilities to handle at school. Before leaving, Yuzu reminded Ayaka and Aki to behave properly and focus on their day. Aki realized that Yuzu and the others took their student council duties very seriously. After they were alone again, Ayaka stayed close to Aki because it had been a while since they had time together. Aki had recently decided to move to Tokyo, and because of that, he did not have any friends yet and did not know anyone. He felt anxious about being left out or treated poorly at school. Ayaka reassured him by staying by his side and showing her support. She told him that she would help him adjust, then left the room briefly to change her appearance. When Ayaka returned, she was wearing her old high school uniform. She believed that practicing conversations with someone unfamiliar would help Aki overcome his nervousness. Ayaka asked Aki to imagine her as a classmate and encouraged him to start a casual conversation. Aki thought that if he could handle this situation well, it would help him feel more confident. They began with a simple self-introduction. Ayaka looked cheerful and asked where Aki came from. Aki explained that he was from Shizuoka. He felt relieved because Ayaka was easy to talk to, which made the practice feel natural and less stressful. During their conversation practice, Ayaka acted playful and exaggerated to lighten the mood, explaining that she was just joking around to help Aki relax. Aki felt confused by her behavior but understood that she was trying to distract him from his anxiety. Ayaka asked whether he still felt nervous and admitted that she also sometimes felt the same way when facing new situations. She reminded him that feeling nervous was normal and that it would fade with time. Although Aki became flustered by her sudden closeness, it made him more aware of his emotions rather than his fear. As it was getting late in the morning, Aki hurried to get his school bag, only to find that Ayaka had already prepared it for him. He was surprised that she had entered his room again without hesitation. Before Aki left for school, Ayaka told him that she truly believed he would make many friends. That day, Aki no longer felt nervous at school. When he returned home, he shared that his first day went smoothly and that he was able to stay calm thanks to the practice they did that morning. He felt that his classmates seemed kind, which made everything easier. Ayaka hugged him gently and praised him for doing his best. She reminded him that she was always willing to help whenever he faced difficulties, as it was part of her role as a caretaker of Sunaharasu. Aki smiled warmly, and that moment marked the beginning of his new life. It had been a full month since Aki started living at Sunaharasu. By now, he had grown used to his new school uniform, his new school, and the unfamiliar environment around him. After returning home from school that day, Aki planned to work on his homework while his mind was still focused. Unfortunately, the moment he opened the door, he froze in surprise after seeing Ayaka wearing a cheerleading outfit. There were still many things in Tokyo that Aki did not fully understand. That afternoon, Aki tried to concentrate on his homework in his room, while Ayaka stayed behind him, offering encouragement in her own energetic way. Aki found himself wondering whether Ayaka was actually supporting him or unintentionally distracting him. He could not understand why she was dressed like that in the first place. Not long after, Yuzu arrived with the others. Yuzu's small body was lifted up by Sumire and Yori, and her head nearly bumped into the doorframe during the commotion. Yuzu then informed Aki that the school would soon be holding its first major event since he had enrolled. Aki could not guess what kind of event the school was planning. Yuzu, growing impatient, lightly struck Aki's stomach to get his attention, and the impact surprised him more than he expected. Yuzu then explained that the big event would be the school's sports festival. According to her, a sports festival always needed strong support, and that support usually came from cheerleaders. Yori mentioned that she had originally made a cheerleading uniform for Sumire, but Sumire had refused to wear it. Aki briefly imagined Sumire in the outfit, only to be snapped back to reality when Sumire pinched his cheek, clearly telling him to stop letting his imagination wander. Aki then grew curious about whether Ayaka would be participating as a cheerleader during the sports festival. Suddenly, Ayaka adjusted her outfit in a careless manner, which caught Aki off guard and made him flustered. Yuzu quickly shifted the focus by declaring that everyone from Sunaharasu was destined to be on the same red team. At that moment, Yuzu's pride was on the line, and losing the festival was not an option for her. Because of that, she decided that Aki would take part in the three-legged race for parent and child teams. Aki was confused about how Yuzu could decide something like that so casually. Yuzu had already asked Ayaka to start training Aki, with practice scheduled to begin the next day. Aki looked hesitant, but Ayaka immediately wrapped her arms around him in encouragement, asking him to give it his all together with her. Seeing them that close, Yuzu quickly scolded them and told them to focus. The next day, Aki and Ayaka began practicing for the three-legged race. Ayaka felt as though she had returned to her own school days. They started with warm-up exercises. Ayaka helped Aki stretch properly, though her overly close guidance made him extremely nervous the entire time. After that, Ayaka asked Aki to help her stretch as well. Aki's face turned bright red as he carefully supported her movements, feeling awkward but determined to help. Once they tied their shoes together, they stood close and prepared to practice. Aki found it difficult to reach Ayaka's shoulder due to their height difference, and he felt clumsy and uncoordinated. However, Ayaka's warmth and gentle presence helped calm him down. They began stepping forward slowly. During the first round of practice, Aki managed to match Ayaka's rhythm. Ayaka praised his effort and encouraged him to pick up the pace. They continued practicing faster steps, repeating the movements again and again until the late afternoon. When Aki finally showed signs of exhaustion, Ayaka decided to end the practice for the day. Aki was surprised by how strong Ayaka's stamina was. She reminded him that they would train again the next morning at 5 o'clock. Aki never expected Ayaka to be so passionate about exercise. As he stood there spacing out, Ayaka urged him to take a shower and rest first. After practice, Aki went to clean up, certain that Ayaka had told him to go first because he was drenched in sweat. He planned to finish quickly, but Ayaka soon appeared nearby wearing casual loungewear, which startled him. Ayaka explained that she wanted to trim Aki's hair since it had grown quite long. Aki tried to refuse, but Ayaka insisted that doing it herself would help him save money instead of going to a barber. Aki's hairstyle had barely changed since his grade school days, which made Ayaka curious about whether he had started caring about how he looked to others. Aki admitted that he was fine with whatever style Ayaka recommended since he knew nothing about hairstyles. Because he trusted her, Ayaka promised she would do her best. She carefully began cutting his hair, asking whether the day's training had been exhausting. Aki admitted that it had been tough, especially since he was still adjusting to matching her pace. Ayaka reassured him that she would continue supporting him and encouraged him to keep pushing himself for the sports festival. The steady rhythm of the haircut made Aki so relaxed that he eventually drifted off to sleep. After Ayaka finished, she gently woke him up. Aki was genuinely happy with the result, and Ayaka felt relieved that her effort had paid off. She neatly adjusted the front of his hair and commented on how cute it looked, even though Aki secretly hoped to be praised as someone cool and dependable. After that, Ayaka washed Aki's hair with shampoo to help relieve the itchiness. Aki truly enjoyed the gentle head massage Ayaka gave him, realizing that it felt far more comfortable than washing his hair by himself. Ayaka played around by shaping the foam into different patterns on Aki's hair. Once she finished washing it, Aki returned to soaking in the bathtub. However, Ayaka did not leave the bathroom, and instead joined him in the tub as well, which naturally caught Aki completely off guard. Ayaka casually explained that bathing together could help them build teamwork for the upcoming race, believing that if they could synchronize their breathing, their running would become faster. Without hesitation, Ayaka stepped into the tub, causing Aki to react in embarrassment and panic. After they finished bathing, Aki lay down on his bed, thinking about how he would likely stay close to Ayaka until the sports festival arrived. Every day, Aki and Ayaka continued their training so they could better match their movements during the competition. They exercised together, played games, shared meals, and rested in the same space as part of their daily routine. Eventually, the day of the sports festival arrived. Yuzu gathered everyone and suggested that they head to school together. Unexpectedly, Aki looked unusually weak that morning. Spending so much time so closely with Ayaka had mentally and physically drained him, and it seemed like he had reached his limit. His expression looked gloomy, as if he might not be very useful that day. On another day, loud screams suddenly came from Yuzu's room, prompting Aki to rush over to check on her. It turned out that Yuzu was terrified because there was a spider in her room. In her panic, she threw an object toward Aki's head, mistakenly accusing him of sneaking around. Yuzu insisted that there was a large spider in her room and demanded that Aki get rid of it. Aki refused because he was scared as well. Yuzu criticized him harshly, calling him weak and unreliable. Aki questioned whether Yuzu was truly that afraid of spiders. Yuzu admitted that she was scared of all insects, especially ones that looked slimy and unpleasant. Hearing that, Aki could not help teasing her a little. Yuzu became irritated and lashed out, knocking Aki to the floor. At that moment, the spider descended right in front of Yuzu's face, causing her to scream in terror. Sumire immediately rushed over to protect Yuzu, accidentally stepping on Aki as he lay on the ground. Sumire focused entirely on making sure Yuzu was safe. Yuzu, still shaking and crying, clung tightly to Sumire, overwhelming her in the process. Sumire prepared herself to deal with the spider, but when it suddenly dropped closer to her, she lost consciousness out of shock. Yuri then calmly explained that spiders were actually harmless and beneficial creatures. She pointed out that their 8 legs made people fear them, but they generally did not attack humans and should not be killed. Even so, Aki felt that the situation could not simply be ignored. Ayaka soon arrived to check on Aki, but unexpectedly, the spider fell onto her chest area. Ayaka remained calm and quickly removed it with her hand, tossing it aside without hesitation. Aki was shocked by how fearless Ayaka was. After everything settled down, Ayaka invited Aki to accompany her on a shopping trip. Aki quietly thought of the invitation as a date. He returned to his room and carefully chose the clothes he would wear while going out with her. Yuzu and the others offered suggestions that were clearly meant as jokes, which Aki firmly rejected, even though Yuri mentioned that one of the outfits would suit him. Yuzu found it strange that Aki could become so indecisive just for a simple shopping trip. Playfully, Aki teased Yuzu by pretending to mention a spider, which immediately startled her. Yuri was surprised by how deep Yuzu's fear of spiders really was. Yuzu commented that everyone had their own weakness and became curious about what Ayaka's weakness might be. She asked Aki to try to find out during their outing. Yuzu and the others planned to take care of dinner while waiting for him to return. Aki was surprised to learn that Yuzu could cook at all, though Yuzu proudly claimed that she was especially skilled at chopping vegetables. Ayaka sincerely thanked Aki for accompanying her on the shopping trip, and also asked for his help carrying their purchases. Aki looked genuinely enthusiastic about assisting her. As they walked through the streets, Aki noticed people glancing in their direction and wondered if they saw them as a couple. In reality, most people were simply curious whether they were a mother and son or perhaps siblings. Ayaka greeted Yatsuho at her stall along the way. Yatsuho was the woman Aki had previously met when he was asking for directions to Sunoharasu. When Ayaka referred to him as Aki-kun, Yatsuho finally realized that Aki was a boy. Ayaka purchased mirin and sake from Yatsuho's stall. Yatsuho thanked Ayaka for helping out during the beer festival that year. Aki did not understand what a beer festival was. Yatsuho explained that Ayaka was quite skilled at drinking beer and could become troublesome when drunk. Aki then realized that Ayaka enjoyed drinking sake. After that, they visited several more stalls to buy various ingredients. Aki helped carry many of the bags. Even after spending that much time together, Aki still felt that he did not know much about what Ayaka liked or disliked. When they crossed the street, Ayaka gently held Aki's hand. She smiled at him, thanking him again for all his help and promising to return the favor someday. For Aki, simply being able to spend time alone with Ayaka already felt more than enough. When they arrived back at the residence, Yuzu immediately noticed that Aki and Ayaka had been walking while holding hands. She quickly pointed it out and urged them to let go right away. After that, Yuzu asked Aki whether he had already discovered Ayaka's weakness. Aki admitted that he still had not found anything that Ayaka was afraid of. Yuzu then handed Aki a horror movie tape and suggested that he invite Ayaka to watch it together. Following that idea, Aki went to Ayaka's room and asked her to watch a horror movie with him. Ayaka agreed and turned off the lights to make the atmosphere feel more like a movie theater. During the movie, however, Aki ended up being the one who felt scared, while Ayaka calmly tried to comfort him. Later, Aki reported back to Yuzu. Yuzu was confused about how Aki had become frightened instead of Ayaka. She decided to change her plan. Yuri quickly gave Aki a coat, which left him wondering what it was for. Yuzu proposed an idea that Aki immediately rejected because it was inappropriate and made him uncomfortable. Realizing that the plan crossed personal boundaries, Yuzu dropped the idea altogether and asked for Sumire's opinion instead. Sumire admitted that the scariest thing in her life was the thought of being separated from Yuzu. Even imagining it made her feel deeply sad. Aki thought that kind of fear was very personal and likely only applied to Sumire herself. With no other ideas left, Yuzu finally told Aki to ask Ayaka directly about what truly scared her. Aki insisted that he did not want to get involved in strange plans anymore, but Yuzu questioned whether he was genuinely not curious about Ayaka's weakness. That question made Aki reflect. He imagined that if he understood what Ayaka feared, he might be able to act more confidently and protect her better. Motivated by that thought, Aki hurried off to find Ayaka. Yuzu and the others were surprised at how easily Aki gave in. Aki found Ayaka in the kitchen and asked her what frightened her. Ayaka smiled, immediately realizing that this was the real reason he had invited her to watch a horror movie. She explained that she felt very uneasy about the idea of someone quietly entering her room while she was asleep. After sharing that, Ayaka returned to her room. Late that night, Aki deliberately approached Ayaka's room to check on her. He saw that she was sleeping peacefully and prepared to leave, but Ayaka unconsciously reached out and held onto his hand. She later revealed that she was actually scared of horror movies, but she had hidden her fear because Aki was the one who invited her. As a result, she felt anxious about sleeping alone and wanted Aki to stay nearby so she could feel safe. Ayaka held on to him closely in a gentle and reassuring way. The next morning, Yuri and the others discovered that Aki had fallen asleep in Ayaka's room. They noticed that the two of them had been resting side by side, still holding hands. Seeing that scene, Yuzu immediately reacted and scolded him loudly, clearly shocked by what she saw. One day, Yuzu was reading a comic in Aki's room and became curious about his opinion on relationships with an age difference. Aki thought that kind of relationship was fairly common. It turned out that Yuzu was referring to age gaps like the one between a teacher and a student. She then explained that she wanted to teach him something about how warm air rises while cooler air stays below. Even though it was already May, the weather felt unusually hot. Since Yuzu's room was on the second floor, it was naturally warmer than Aki's room downstairs. Because of that, she decided to take a short rest in Aki's room instead. Aki complained and asked Yuzu to move to the living room, but she refused and reminded him not to get irritated too easily, joking that it could stress him out. Yuzu commented on how pleasant Aki's bed smelled, which made Aki feel embarrassed as he noticed her paying close attention to it. Aki then realized that the two of them were alone together in his room. He simply looked at Yuzu and tried to act normal. Yuzu noticed Aki staring at her and wondered why he kept doing so. She assumed he was curious about the comic she was reading and invited him to sit beside her, but Aki hesitated and refused at first. Yuzu teasingly thought he was being disobedient toward the student council president. In the end, Aki gave in and sat next to her, though he kept a noticeable distance. Yuzu seemed dissatisfied and shifted closer, choosing a position that made her feel more comfortable because her arms felt tired. Aki felt that Yuzu was being a bit over the top and found himself unable to move freely, so he focused on reading the comic instead. As he looked at the pages, Aki realized that Yuzu liked romantic comics. He thought that comics from that era often contained very dramatic scenes. Yuzu was surprised by how intense one particular page was. She appeared nervous and suddenly became aware that she had never really thought of Aki as a guy before. She also realized that her behavior might have seemed overly familiar. When Aki was about to turn the page, Yuzu abruptly stood up and made it clear that she did not want him to misunderstand her intentions. Right after that, she hurried out of Aki's room. Ayaka happened to see Yuzu leaving in such a rush and felt confused. She then went to Aki's room, bringing along some homemade cake. Aki thanked her and commented that it looked delicious. Ayaka asked why Yuzu had rushed out earlier. Aki admitted that he did not know the reason, explaining that they had simply been reading a comic together before Yuzu suddenly left. Ayaka asked Aki to reenact what had happened, so she could better understand how Yuzu might have felt, especially their positions while reading the comic together. Aki realized that the situation had been rather awkward. He explained how close their positions had been at the time. Ayaka encouraged him to demonstrate, which made Aki extremely embarrassed and caused his face to turn red. He found it hard to concentrate with Ayaka standing so close behind him. When Aki said that he finally understood Yuzu's feelings, Ayaka deliberately leaned in and held him tightly, clearly teasing him. Not long after that, Yuzu returned to retrieve her comic and became visibly annoyed when she saw what Ayaka and Aki were doing. She could not understand why the two of them seemed to enjoy acting so overly affectionate. From a distance, Sumire silently observed everything that was happening. The next day, while Aki was walking home, he felt like someone was following him. Sure enough, Sumire was watching him from behind. Throughout the day, Aki had the uneasy feeling of being observed. When he went into a restroom, Sumire unexpectedly followed him inside, which startled him. Aki quickly insisted that she step outside. Sumire then explained that she had been observing his activities all day. Aki finally understood why he had felt watched the entire time. Sumire admitted that she felt compelled to do this because Yuzu kept talking about Aki. Because of that, Sumire wanted to understand what Aki had that she herself did not. She tried to get closer to him in an intrusive way, but Aki firmly stopped her and protected his personal boundaries. He suggested that Sumire should ask Yuzu directly instead of investigating him. Sumire replied that Yuzu was always busy and implied that Aki should be more aware of the situation. Aki realized that both Sumire and Yuzu had their own unique personalities. After that, Sumire followed Aki into his room. Even though she claimed she would not bother him, Aki was surprised that she actually came inside. He could not relax at all because every movement he made seemed to be carefully observed by Sumire. He was also startled when she suddenly stepped closer to him. Sumire pointed out that many of his homework answers were incorrect. Aki commented that she must be very diligent with her studies, but Sumire said that it was only natural for a student council member. According to her, being part of the student council meant setting a good example for other students. That made Aki wonder if Yuzu was also academically talented. Sumire then patiently helped Aki correct his homework. Aki felt genuinely happy because her explanations were easy to understand and made studying enjoyable. Only afterward did Sumire realize what she had been doing, and she returned to her original goal of examining Aki's room. She carefully looked around every corner of the room. Her proximity made Aki feel tense, and he tried to avert his gaze to stay calm. Sumire discovered a cat plush toy and asked Aki about it. He explained that it was a gift from a friend before he moved to Tokyo. Sumire hugged the plush tightly, surprising Aki. He never expected her to like something like that. Sumire then wondered whether it was strange for her to enjoy cute things. Aki admitted that he did not fit every traditional expectation of masculinity and that he also liked cute items. Hearing that made Sumire happy, as she believed it was completely normal to enjoy things that were cute. Aki had never seen Sumire look so enthusiastic before. Suddenly, Ayaka came to Aki's room to return his laundry. She was clearly surprised when she saw Aki looking unusually close to Sumire. To prevent any misunderstanding, Sumire immediately made it clear to Ayaka that she had no kind of relationship with Aki. Aki felt relieved because Sumire was always honest and straightforward. Sumire admitted that the two of them had only ended up showing each other their embarrassing sides, even though her explanation sounded somewhat ambiguous. Ayaka responded by saying that she also had something similar, which completely caught Aki off guard. Shortly after that, Ayaka left Aki's room. Sumire seemed to understand why Yuzu was fond of Aki, so she took a closer look at him to confirm her thoughts. She then apologized for causing trouble and said her goodbyes. Aki felt that the entire day had been incredibly exhausting. Before leaving, Sumire reminded him to place any inappropriate magazines on a high shelf, so Yuzu would not be able to reach them. Aki was confused because he was certain he did not own anything like that. One night, Yuri, Aki, and Yuzu quietly checked on Sumire, who appeared unusually gloomy in her room. Aki became curious about what had caused her mood to change. Yuri then explained what had happened earlier at the amusement park. Sumire had gone there together with Yuri and Yuzu. Yuzu was very eager to ride one of the attractions, but the staff informed them that the minimum height requirement was 140 centimeters. Sumire blamed herself and thought that things would have been better if she had never suggested going to the amusement park in the first place. She became overwhelmed with guilt and fell into deep despair. According to Yuri, Sumire tended to become overly emotional whenever something involved Yuzu. Aki guessed that Sumire's feelings were extremely fragile. Yuzu explained that Sumire could not bring herself to face her and had chosen to stay locked inside her room. She then asked Aki to do something to help. Aki hesitated, believing it would not be appropriate for a boy to enter a girl's room alone. Yuri argued that it would be fine if it was another girl. As a result, Yuri dressed Aki in girl's clothing so he could approach Sumire more easily. Aki could not believe they actually went through with that plan. Yuzu commented that Aki looked surprisingly good and encouraged him to go into Sumire's room. Aki followed their suggestion and entered Sumire's room, introducing himself under the name Akiko. Sumire looked drained and unmotivated. Aki observed the room, which was filled with plush toys, and realized that Sumire was far more feminine than he had expected. Sumire asked whether Aki had only come to look around her room. Aki explained that his goal was to help her return to her usual self. Sumire responded by saying that she felt like she had only been a burden to Yuzu, which was why she believed staying alone in her room was the best choice. Aki offered his support, but Sumire instead asked him to help her prepare her pajamas because she lacked the energy to do it herself. Aki felt extremely embarrassed but chose to help in a careful and respectful way. After assisting her, Sumire asked him to retrieve her pajamas from the closet. Aki complied, even though he felt uncomfortable being in that situation. He was surprised by how cute the pajamas were. Once everything was settled, the atmosphere became calmer. Sumire then appeared sad again, explaining that she felt weak because she had not been able to carry Yuzu at all that day. She could not bring herself to ask Yuzu directly and felt as though she had reached her limit. At that moment, Aki said that he was willing to take her place and help however he could. Sumire agreed, and after she lifted Aki onto her shoulders, her energy quickly returned. In an instant her mood improved, and she apologized for making everyone worry. Aki asked to be put down, feeling extremely embarrassed. Sumire then apologized to Yuzu for causing trouble. Yuzu felt relieved to see Sumire back to her usual self and said that this was how she should be. Yuzu admitted that it felt strange not being carried that day, but that feeling alone would not make her gloomy, as she had already faced many challenges. She then invited everyone to return to the amusement park to try the rides again. Even after trying to increase her height in a creative way, the staff still would not allow her on the attraction. Back at the dormitory, Aki was walking alone when he suddenly heard someone calling his name, even though he could not see anyone nearby. Yuri suddenly appeared and startled him. She explained that she needed Aki's help with something that only he could do. Aki became convinced that it must be his responsibility as a boy. Feeling enthusiastic, he declared that he was more than willing to help and even said that a man's words should never be taken back. Yuri then invited Aki to her room. Although he hesitated at first, Yuri reassured him that no one else could help her with this. Aki innocently agreed and followed her. Upon arriving in Yuri's room, Aki felt nervous because it was his first time being there. He noticed a photo of the residents of Sunaharasu and commented that they looked young in the picture. Yuri quickly reminded him that it was impolite to talk about a woman's age. Aki assumed that she would ask him to do some physical work or help deal with insects, but instead, Yuri asked him to try on a maid outfit. Aki was stunned and realized that Yuri seemed to enjoy seeing him wear girls' clothing. Yuri explained that she enjoyed making clothes and wanted to check the sizing. Yuzu was too small, while Sumire and Ayaka were too tall, leaving Aki as the only one whose size fit properly. Aki hesitated because it was women's clothing, but Yuri insisted that the outfit was cute and reminded him that he had already promised to help her. Aki wondered why Yuri did not try it on herself, but she continued to press him to keep his word. Aki went along with the request and asked Yuri to turn around while he changed clothes. Before this, Aki's older sister had often asked him to try on women's outfits as well. From Aki's point of view, the clothes did not seem like they would fit him properly, since Yuri's body type was obviously different from his. However, to his surprise, the outfit fit Aki perfectly. It turned out that Yuri had made it specifically to match his measurements. It was not just the maid outfit that Aki was asked to try on. There were many other outfits displayed in the room that Yuri wanted him to wear as well. With little room to argue, Aki could only go along with everything. Yuri also asked Aki to strike some cute poses because she wanted to take photos of him. His poses and expressions turned out better than expected, and Yuri was very pleased with the results. She felt satisfied with her choices. For the final outfit, Yuri brought out a simple swim outfit she had prepared for a playful photo concept. Aki was caught completely off guard and immediately refused, feeling uncomfortable with the idea of wearing something like that. At that moment, Ayaka heard the noise coming from Yuri's room and asked what was going on inside. Aki panicked because he did not want Ayaka to see how he looked. Acting on impulse, Aki pulled Yuri into the closet and asked her to stay quiet. Ayaka then entered Yuri's room but did not find anyone inside. After Ayaka left the room, Aki finally felt relieved. Yuri then wondered what Aki thought about the situation they had just been in. Aki suddenly realized how close they had been in the cramped space and quickly jumped out of the closet. Later, Aki lay down in his own room, still thinking about the strange and flustering experience from earlier. Meanwhile, Yuri had intentionally taken photos of Aki because she planned to display them together with pictures of the other dorm residents. One day, Yuzu was chatting with Ayaka and Aki at the dining table, and the conversation turned to the topic of June brides. Ayaka shared the common belief that couples who get married in June are said to enjoy lifelong happiness. She also mentioned that becoming a June bride is often considered a dream for many women. Hearing that, Aki began to wonder whether Ayaka herself might be thinking about marriage. His imagination started running wild, and he became so distracted that he accidentally spilled his juice, soaking Yuzu's magazine. Realizing what he had done, Aki sincerely apologized for his carelessness. Trying to change the subject, Aki asked whether women really thought about becoming June brides all the time. Yuzu explained that she felt she was still too young to seriously think about marriage, so it was not something she cared much about yet. Aki found her answer surprising, especially since Yuzu's expression suggested that she actually had more on her mind than she was letting on. Yuzu noticed Aki's curiosity and admitted that she had imagined herself becoming a devoted wife who supports her husband and builds a warm home together with him. Aki started imagining a peaceful domestic life, but his thoughts became a bit too obvious from his expression. Annoyed by that look, Yuzu immediately tossed some food at him to snap him back to reality. Not long after, Sumire and Yuri joined them, having been drawn in by the conversation about marriage. Yuri shared that she liked the idea of being deeply involved in her future husband's life and supporting each other completely as a team. She seemed genuinely happy imagining herself as a dependable partner. Sumire, on the other hand, admitted that she had never seriously thought about marriage. Yuzu commented that although Sumire appeared from the outside to be a hardworking, career-focused woman, she was actually very affectionate and gentle at home. Sumire quickly denied that image, insisting that she would never act as sweet or clingy as Yuzu described. Yuri then grew curious about Ayaka's view on marriage, and Yuzu felt the same. Ayaka explained that she believed the best kind of relationship was one where both partners helped and supported each other equally. However, she also felt that her current daily life was already fulfilling, so marriage was not something she was actively thinking about yet. Yuzu and the others were deeply moved by Ayaka's calm and mature perspective. After that, everyone became curious about Aki's thoughts on marriage and whether there was anyone he might want to marry someday. The question caught Aki completely off guard, and Yuzu quickly told him that he did not need to answer something so sudden and personal. Later, while resting in his room, Aki kept thinking about Ayaka's words regarding mutual support in a relationship. He wondered if there was anything he could do right now to be more helpful to her. In his imagination, he pictured a future where he could support Ayaka in small, meaningful ways as they went through daily life together. Motivated by those thoughts, Aki picked up a magazine and looked for tips on how to help others more effectively. Around that time, Ayaka was getting ready to cook, and Aki suddenly showed up and asked her to teach him how to cook. Ayaka was surprised by the request, but Aki explained that he had simply felt like learning something new. Ayaka smiled and asked him to help prepare the ingredients. She showed Aki how to properly handle chicken and how to chop onions safely. They continued by making a potato salad, and Ayaka asked Aki to pour in the mayonnaise. There was only a small amount left, so she demonstrated how she usually made sure none of it went to waste. Once the meal was ready, Yuzu was thrilled to see fried chicken served at the table. Ayaka mentioned that Aki had helped her cook, which surprised Sumire. Sumire jokingly commented that Aki was acting like a very dependable future partner. Hearing that made Yuzu visibly annoyed, and she admitted that she felt frustrated about being outdone by Aki in terms of domestic skills. Aki, however, looked confused since he had actually been trying to appear more reliable rather than gentle. Yuri casually added that cooking was often considered a shared responsibility in a household. After dinner, Aki headed back to his room, and Yuzu followed shortly after. Aki asked what Yuzu wanted to talk about. Yuzu hesitantly brought up her worries about personal appearance and self-confidence, wondering whether people tended to prefer certain looks over others. The topic surprised Aki, and he asked why she was so concerned about it. Yuzu insisted on hearing his honest opinion. Feeling awkward but sincere, Aki told her that he thought she looked great just the way she was. Instead of feeling reassured, Yuzu became embarrassed and lightly kicked him in frustration. She admitted that, compared to Sumire and Yuri, she often felt insecure about herself. Aki realized that her worries were similar to his own insecurities. He suggested that she might feel better talking with Sumire or Yuri about it. Yuzu immediately rejected the idea, saying that it would be too embarrassing, especially since Sumire clearly liked Yuzu just the way she was. Yuzu felt more comfortable talking about these concerns with Aki instead, and they went to her room. Aki was surprised to discover that Yuzu had her own personal computer. She also wore blue light-blocking glasses, which made her look more studious than usual. Yuzu asked Aki to help her look up information online, explaining that she was too embarrassed to search for it herself. Aki hesitated but eventually helped her browse articles related to self-care and confidence. As he read through various tips, Yuzu eagerly tried some of the harmless advice, but when the information started becoming inappropriate, Yuzu immediately stopped him and scolded him for showing her something unsuitable. Despite the awkwardness, the moment ended with both of them realizing how important it was to respect boundaries while supporting each other in their own ways. After that, Aki went to the laundry room. He thought it might be better to ask Ayaka about something that had been on his mind. Ayaka noticed that Aki had been looking at her for a while, and she gently pulled him closer, making him realize that staring at someone without a clear reason was not polite. Aki reflected on how Ayaka's calm and warm presence seemed to represent her kindness. He began to wonder whether a person's outward appearance could somehow reflect the size of their heart and their compassion. Aki felt as if he had stumbled upon a strange insight about life and decided that he wanted to share this thought with Yuzu. Aki hurried to Yuzu's room, but unfortunately, Yuzu was in the middle of her personal self-care routine and was completely caught off guard by his sudden arrival. She became extremely embarrassed and reacted by pushing him away and forcing him out of the room. Aki tried to explain his idea, thinking that Ayaka's gentle nature was what made her so admirable, and that Yuzu could also grow more confident by being open-hearted. Instead of calming the situation, this only made Yuzu even more upset, and she chased Aki out of her room. Later, Yuzu met Ayaka, who was cleaning the dormitory. Ayaka showed Yuzu an old swimsuit from when she was younger. Seeing it made Yuzu think that there was still hope for her to grow and change in her own way. She became very excited by this thought, and it was fortunate that Ayaka did not mention that the swimsuit was from her grade school days. That afternoon, Ayaka surprised Aki by suddenly appearing at his window. She invited him to help fix a leaking roof. Ayaka apologized for disturbing Aki while he was studying, but Aki was more than willing to help her. They climbed up to the roof using a ladder, and it was the first time Aki had ever seen the view from up there. He almost slipped, but Ayaka quickly caught him. Aki could not tell whether his racing heart was caused by being so close to Ayaka or by the height itself. They covered the roof with a tarp. The building was old, and Ayaka explained that her grandmother wanted to protect the memories inside it, which was why it had never been rebuilt. Ayaka respected that wish deeply. Their work finished sooner than expected, and Ayaka thanked Aki, saying that she could not have done it without him. Suddenly, they realized that the ladder they had used had fallen over. Aki was certain that someone must have knocked it down by accident. At that time, Yuzu and the others had not returned yet, and Aki did not have his phone with him. Aki suggested that the roof was not too high and that he might be able to climb down carefully, but Ayaka refused to let him do something so risky. She offered to go instead, but Aki stopped her, knowing it would be dangerous. They sat quietly on the roof, hoping that a neighbor might pass by. Ayaka believed that Yuzu and the others would return soon. Aki found himself wishing that he could stay alone with Ayaka a little longer. Before long, heavy rain began to fall. They remained seated, covering themselves with the tarp. Ayaka apologized, never expecting the situation to turn out that way. Aki reassured her that it was not her fault, since the rainy season had already begun. To keep Aki warm, Ayaka held him close so he would not feel cold. Yuzu and the others still had not returned, likely because they were busy with student council activities. Aki briefly wondered what would happen if no one came, then questioned why he kept thinking such strange thoughts. Suddenly, Aki slipped again, but Ayaka quickly caught him once more. Not long after, Yuzu arrived and saw them on the roof, asking what they were doing. Yuzu and the others followed her up. Ayaka explained that she and Aki were fixing the roof, but Yuzu and the others misunderstood the situation and teased them for being too close. Aki denied it and explained that the ladder had fallen, leaving them unable to get down. Yuzu commented on how careless that was, but moments later, the ladder she was using also fell over. On another day, heavy rain poured down after school. Aki headed straight for the bathroom, but Yuzu rushed ahead of him. Aki noticed that Yuzu's clothes were soaked from the rain, which made her feel very embarrassed. Aki pointed out that Yuzu had rushed in without thinking, even though he had arrived first. Yori suggested that they settle it fairly by playing rock, paper, scissors to decide who would go first. The four of them played, and Aki and Yuzu won. As a result, Yori told them they could use the bathroom first. Yuzu decided to wait and take her turn later with Yuri and Sumire. Yori felt slightly guilty toward Aki, but Yuzu joked that Aki should feel lucky just knowing they were nearby. Yuri commented that Yuzu's joke sounded a bit inappropriate, and the moment quickly turned awkward before everyone moved on. Meanwhile, Ayaka helped dry Aki's soaking wet hair. She wondered why he had not taken a bath first, and Aki explained that Yuzu and the others were using the bathroom before him. He felt slightly awkward yet comforted as Ayaka gently focused on drying his head. At the same time, Yuzu and Yuri had already stepped into the bath. Yuzu encouraged Sumire to join them, while Sumire appeared visibly nervous. Yuri reminded Yuzu not to tease her, hoping to keep the atmosphere calm and comfortable. When Sumire finally joined them, she remained cautious and only dipped her feet into the water. Yuzu pulled her closer so they could soak together, causing Sumire to blush and grow flustered. As Yuzu washed her hair, Yuri quietly noticed how much more mature Sumire seemed compared to before. Yuzu jokingly wished she could share even a fraction of that growth. Sumire casually mentioned that Yuzu herself had changed slightly, which immediately lifted Yuzu's mood and made her feel rewarded for her efforts. It had been a long time since the three of them had bathed together, and with a school trip coming up soon, they hoped there might be another chance. Yori felt a bit concerned about leaving Aki behind during the autumn trip, imagining that Ayaka would end up taking care of him alone. Yuzu agreed that someone should probably keep an eye on Aki while they were away. Yori suggested asking Nana for help, but Yuzu felt uncertain about trusting Nana with that responsibility. They eventually realized that having a boy living with them meant they always had to stay aware of their surroundings. Elsewhere, Ayaka noticed Aki sneezing repeatedly and asked if he was still feeling cold. She offered him a blanket and a warm drink, but Aki insisted that he was fine. Unexpectedly, Ayaka moved closer, attempting to warm him up directly, which immediately made Aki uncomfortable and caused him to refuse. Ayaka then checked his temperature by leaning in close to his face. Aki's face turned red and his body temperature rose. He quickly pulled away and reassured her again that he was fine. Ayaka then invited Aki to lie down with his head resting on her lap. Aki realized that she had been asking him to do this quite often lately. As Ayaka gently stroked his hair, she reflected on how Yuzu had been the one resting on her lap recently, while Yuri had never done so. Ayaka expressed her determination to keep trying until Yuri would eventually feel comfortable enough to rest there as well. Before long, Yuzu returned with ice cream and noticed Aki sleeping soundly. She lightly pressed the cold treat against him to wake him up, and urged him to go take a bath. Curious about what they had been talking about, Yuzu asked, and Ayaka explained that they had been discussing when Yuri might finally rest on her lap. Without hesitation, Yuzu and Sumire pulled Yuri over and guided her into Ayaka's lap. Yuri was completely caught off guard, having believed all this time that she could avoid that situation.